Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Erin Bradley, and I'm grateful that you are taking some time out of your day today. And I think you will be grateful as well because you get the opportunity to meet my new friend, Meredith Bell. And Meredith is the co-founder and the president of an organization called Grow Strong Leaders, which is also the name of the podcast that she hosts, which is one of the top 2.5% of podcasts globally. No big deal. And she's very, very passionate about building long lasting relationships in your business and in your life, and leadership training, mindset, everything we're passionate about here at Pursuing Freedom. And I had the opportunity to meet Meredith and be on her show not too long ago. And we just knew that we had to have her here for your benefit. So, with no further ado, I would love it, Meredith, if you could share a little bit about your backstory, your journey in the business world, and how it's led you to what you're so passionate about today as it relates to leadership and helping grow strong leaders.
Well, thank you so much, Erin. I'm excited about our conversation too, because we've just been in such alignment with our energy and our ideas. My history is interesting, and I bet some of your listeners will connect with this. It had nothing to do with sales or business development. I was an elementary school teacher and got bored with doing lesson plans and moved into school board office leadership roles and found I didn't do politics or bureaucracy very well. So I ended up leaving and going on my own with no experience whatsoever in business. But I had enjoyed training teachers. And one of the things that I was most passionate about then and still am all these years later is communication skills. So I took that experience and decided I would start offering training programs to organizations. And I used speaking as my marketing vehicle, speaking to local groups as a way of displaying things that I knew. And it's how my business got started and grew. And I was doing a lot of different training around communication, leadership, even sales and service, customer service. And then I met one of my two business partners, Denny Coates, in 1990. So we're talking way back. And he and I just really connected and decided to put our two businesses together. And we brought in a third partner at the same time. So we've worked together now for 34 years. And it's been an amazing journey. And during that time, we were doing, in the early days, a lot of training and leadership development. And we were looking for a tool that is known as 360 feedback. And there weren't very many of them back then. It's a process where you get feedback, not just from your boss, but from people who work with you to help you understand better what are your strengths and what are the areas people would like to see you make some changes in order for you to be more effective. So when we couldn't find one that we thought would work well, we decided to create our own. And so we made the decision to change over, now it's called pivoting, into a software company. Back in 94, we had no background in that. So you can get a little pattern here of just trying things with no experience, but having that inner confidence, I'll figure it out or will figure it out. And so we've been in that business ever since. So from 360 feedback assessments, we also started creating some online tools for development around communication skills in this whole area called character. And so that's what we have been doing now for many years. And we are still passionate about it because you know as well as I do, there are still a lot of leaders out there that aren't effective in their leadership. And they just don't know what to do. And they don't realize the problems they are causing others. And so we are especially interested in working in organizations where they already care about their people. They understand the importance of investing in development for their leaders, for their employees, because they know that's how the company will grow in value, is if they grow the value of the people who work there. So my podcast was a natural outgrowth of the work that we were doing because I wanted to be able to bring on board people who are interested in growing themselves as well as growing the other people in their organizations.
Amazing. I already have a page of notes and questions to ask you. So I feel like this is kind of a hot topic right now in terms of leadership. And it's ironically something that in a couple of weeks I'm going to be hosting a masterclass around this topic that entrepreneurial freedom is not a solo sport. And I'm thinking back to the early days of being as Michael Gerber talks about in the E-Myth, which is a great book. I'm sure you read, you know, entrepreneurs wear a lot of hats in the beginning. They're solopreneurs, right? We take this leap of faith, we go 100% commission, we forego the steady paycheck, and we just jump off the cliff and hope that we'll grow the wings on the way down, right? And in the process, we start trying to figure it all out. We want to do all the things. And the E-Myth, he talks about, being the technician and the manager and the entrepreneur. And so as we're training future leaders, we need to help them make this transition from I'm a great technician. Like I've figured out what boxes need to be checked and T's that need to be crossed and I's that need to be dotted. And I know that I need help, but maybe I don't feel confident as a leader. And I've seen it a lot, even just with peers and friends, colleagues, where they make that transition into what they call the team leader in real estate and mortgage without addressing the need to develop the leadership skills. And what I often see is this frustration that evolves because the leader has all these expectations of the people that they've hired without any, you know, real training in leadership, as well as without understanding what it means to develop people. So I would love to hear you unpack this from your perspective, because I know it was a journey for me as well to recognize what leadership means is pouring into my team members as much as I'm pouring into my potential clients, and remembering that there was a point at which I realized that in order to develop a cohesive customer experience from the individuals on the team as well as the collective, right? So like the collective experience of working with our organization, that I needed to give as much love and energy and attention to my team members and let that love translate through them to the client experience. So I feel like it was an evolution and required a lot of dedication to developing those skills. I'm just kind of curious, from your words, your perspective, what do you see in that? And what do you think people need to hear if they think, I know that I need help, but I don't think of myself as a good leader?
There's so much to say about that. For one thing, you're absolutely right. It is more common than not for somebody with technical expertise or ability in whatever the field is, like a top salesperson, to get promoted to a leadership role with no preparation. It's unfortunate. Most companies just don't have that in place. And so you get someone that was a very high performer in one role who has no idea what to do in this new role and they're lost. And so I think for somebody that's interested in understanding what's involved in leadership, first understanding I need to lead myself. So if you're doubting that you have leadership skills, put on a different pair of glasses and look at the fact that you've been leading yourself for a long time. And so there are skills with self leadership that can carry over into leading others. So we don't need to feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I made a lot of mistakes in my early leadership journey too. That's a part of the process. We can't get it right all the time. But if we can stay open and learning, that's huge right there. I think a key thing is communication skills. And of course, I'm biased because that's what we've been studying, but we have seen over time, inevitably, issues between people come down to how are we communicating with each other? How are we connecting with each other? And so that willingness to be open and vulnerable when you go into a new role, sometimes you feel like I've got to act like I have it all together, when in reality, people will respect you more because they know you don't already. They know. So it's not genuine or real for you to pretend like you've got it all together. So the more you're willing to be honest and open and say, I don't have all the answers here. And that's one of the key things that I think someone who is a high performer moving into a leadership role needs to think about. You do not have to have all the answers. You don't need to put that kind of pressure on yourself. And that's where building a team of people who are not like you, who have different strengths, is really important to building your business or building your team, whatever role you're in. It's understanding that I don't have to be the answer person. I can be the question person. That makes all the difference. I remember a good friend of mine who said when he first got into a leadership role, and he was in a sales leader role, he was sweating through his suit every day for a year until he started working with a coach who listened to him and observed him and said, I know what your problem is. It's that you feel like you still have to provide all the answers, and you don't. That's not your job anymore. Your job is to ask questions and draw it out of other people. Yes, there's times when you hire someone that onboarding them, you need to train them and teach them things. But in general, you don't want to create this kind of dependence where when you do bring on people, they're always coming to you because they're afraid to make decisions. They're afraid to take any action without getting your approval. So noticing how comfortable you are letting go and allowing other people to try things, because I guarantee you that by yourself, you are not going to have all the great ideas. And nor should you feel like you need to. That's unnecessary pressure. When we realize that we can solicit input from others, and here's one final quote. This is from Gary Ridge, who was the CEO of WD-40, a product everybody knows. He said his favorite three words as CEO were, I don't know. Isn't that a relief to think that somebody of that stature and that position can say, I don't know, and feel good about it?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about how you don't have to be the answer person, you can be the question person, is I know in my own experience, when I think about mistakes that I made, one of the mistakes I made was feeling like I wanted to be able to fix everything. And I didn't want to put a burden on others. So I held on to too many things that I could have let go of way sooner. And only after having the guts to let go of certain things that I was terrified to let go of did I find access to the opening of the portal to the next level of growth. Because when you're holding on to too much, you're just creating the bottleneck. So, how do you help leaders that are struggling with that? Where, sure, there might have been some fear around what if somebody messes it up, or it's fine, I can just do it myself. But there was also, I think, a little bit of guilt. Like, I don't want to put too much on somebody else's plate, so I'll just hold on to it. It's fine, and talk myself into being okay with holding on to too many balls that I'm juggling in the air. And as a result, not being an effective leader because I was simply doing too much. And
Yeah.
I see this a lot in real estate and mortgage, where you get the person in place, but you don't necessarily release the reins of enough things for you to be able to be present as a leader. And so sometimes I felt like my team members could barely catch up with me. Like maybe they don't want to bother me because I'm presenting as so busy, right? So how do you help people navigate that with more speed, more velocity, more efficiency so that they can grow? Because I do believe there is this little messy in the middle that happens.
Part of it is it doesn't have to take a long time. A piece of it is self awareness, becoming aware of when I'm feeling pressured and especially overwhelmed and even resentment. Why aren't they noticing I'm drowning here? Why aren't they? So, as soon as I get into that thought process of complaining or resenting, that's a good time to pause and say, what's going on inside you right now? Where are you feeling or thinking things that are not useful for you? So I think becoming aware of our thoughts is a really key step. How do we perceive? Are we thinking, oh, I don't want to put them out. I don't want to, what kind of thought is that? Is it because I'm afraid of letting go? Is it because I don't trust that person? What's behind the thought? So if we can pause long enough to think about what's the reason why I'm feeling this way or thinking this way, then we can make the change once we're aware that that way of thinking is not serving us. So it doesn't have to take a long time. It's the noticing and then choosing to start doing something different when that thought occurs to us, rather than the same thing we've been doing. So we look at a choice. What could I do here instead of what I normally do? It's that simple. Erin, that's the thing. We sometimes get complicated and say, oh, this is wrong with me and that's wrong with me. Stop the judgment of where you might feel like you're falling short and simply say, today I'm going to choose differently. I'm going to look at where can I give opportunities to this person to shine that in the past I would have done. So it's being more conscious and intentional in looking at where you can hand off something to someone else. And another question would be, is this the best use of my time? Is doing this the best use of my time? How can I bring in someone else who has those talents, has those skills, or can learn them and pass this on to that person? Another way of framing it is, what is the best use of my time? So that I become utterly clear on where I can get the best return on my time. That opens the door for change.
Yeah, I love this. I wrote down noticing and then choosing, and I think, you said it's like it's simple, but it's not easy, but we have to start from within and have that willingness to be a witness to our patterns of thoughts that create our patterns of behavior if we want to make a change. And it's a choice to make a change. It's a decision. What about how do you address the fear that so many people have of what if I hire somebody and then the business isn't succeeding at a level that I can afford this person? Because I feel like when I look back at the times that I thought I could not afford to hire some help, and I thought it was better to keep doing it the way I was always doing it, which was getting me the results I always had been getting. And then on the other side of getting the right support in place, I was a very clear witness to the fact that I couldn't have afforded not to. Like there was no version of us getting to the place that we got to in our business
Exactly.
had I not been willing to act in spite of the fear. How do you help people through that? Because I think there's some common fears here is like, what if I can't afford them? What if they mess up? It's all this fear that keeps people doing what they've always done and getting what they've always gotten.
It goes back to asking a different question. If I ask, what things could I do if I hire this person? What can I release and take on instead that will make more money than I could possibly have made if I didn't hire this person? So I think, listening to you say those questions, we get ourselves all worked up in a lather, about what if, what if, what if? Well, what if we could give ourselves the opportunity to consider looking at this and experiencing this in a different way? One of my favorite people that I ever listened to is Steve Hardison. And he says, we create everything in our world. So it isn't what's going on out there that determines what we're experiencing. It's the lens we're bringing to any situation. And so we can create what we want. We can create ourselves to be the kind of person that hires someone and successfully trains them to take on the part of the business we need them to take on so we can make more money. We can
Yeah.
create ourselves that way, and we create them. Now, that's not to say they don't come to us with certain skills. I think hiring right is part of the underlying of the fear that you're talking about. Am I going to choose the right person? Is this going to work out? But being clear about what is most important to you. And I think you hit on this in your book or in one of the podcasts I heard you on. This whole idea of it's much more important to get your values in alignment and find someone who matches up with you in terms of what's important to them, the ethics they operate from, because you can teach them the technical pieces. It's much harder to form alignment, and sometimes it's impossible if your values are not matched up from the get-go. So that's an important piece to identify before you bring somebody on board. And then looking at the possibilities. I believe in speaking possibility into other people. So that's how we're creating them. I'll just give you a simple example because this comes, you have such wonderful ideas in your book about forming relationships. And one of the ways that I do that is the way I make introductions. I don't just send an email, saying, Erin, meet John, John, meet Erin, here are your LinkedIn profiles, have at it. I create them with each other. So what does that mean? I take time to think about what about Erin could I say to John that he would go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to her. And the same thing, with both people, I have a little paragraph that I write where I'm describing in truth. I'm not making things up, but I'm describing elements of this person that I know will resonate with this other person. So by the time they meet, it's like, oh, I already like you. And so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. We create other people in our own mind, whether it's your spouse, your best friend, your boss, your coworkers. We see them in a particular way. Well, what if we create in our minds their potential? We see them
Mm.
as capable and not dependent. Anytime I find myself complaining in my mind about somebody, I know there's something with me that I'm not happy with. And so I need to, get in touch with that and then look at how can I bring love to this person? How can I bring out the best in them? When I focus on that, which is all compatible with both of our approaches on service, then how we interact with others is we're not as worried or fearful because we're kind of releasing that to get into that creative mode of what can we create here instead of what could go wrong and spending time on that negative energy. It doesn't serve us.
You're talking about the worry and the fear and love and all this, and I forget where I heard it, but that fear cannot exist in the same space as love. And when it comes to execution of anything, every single person we admire experiences fear in some capacity or has, and it becomes a muscle that we can develop where we can be a witness to it, evaluate the narrative in the mind, determine if it's true, and then make a decision to act in spite of fear. But if you simply say, to your point, I can create the possibility in somebody else. I can create the potential in them. Instead of focusing on their shortcomings, I can look for their gifts and I can help them see the gifts in themselves and I can help them develop those gifts into skill sets that would be applicable to this business. And so it really is about loving others. And I think that when you come from that place of love and curiosity, it dissipates the fear and the insecurity and it allows us to move through because every single person listening has felt fear before and made a decision anyway. And usually it ends up being the best decision ever. Like you look back and you think, I was terrified to do that. And it was the smartest decision of my life. So I also think that can inform our future decisions so that every time we find ourselves on that leading edge of like, what if it doesn't work? Well, what if it does? Let's daydream into the potential. I love that.
I have a quote on my desktop that I want to share because it ties in curiosity and love. And it's from Steve Chandler's book, How to Get Clients, which is a great book. He says, curiosity is the most powerful relationship creator in the world. It is an amazing mix of compassion and intelligence, commitment to understand and assist the other person. Now, here's the kicker. Curiosity is what is expressed, and love is what is felt.
Ooh.
Is that not powerful? Because it really reinforces what you just said. When we can be curious with another person and genuinely interested in learning about them, they feel that love from us. And I'm telling you, that is the key to being an effective leader. If you circle back to what we started with, people that are getting into leadership roles, if you simply express curiosity, genuinely be curious about learning about the people on your team and what they have to offer or what's important to them, then I'll tell you what, one of the greatest gifts anybody gets is being listened to. And if one of the people on your team feels that you are really listening to them to get them and you're genuinely wanting to learn about them, you will not believe how quickly you build trust with them. It's magical, honestly, because it can happen quickly. Because you're being open, you're showing that you care. And sometimes we hold back that caring for fear of not being respected or, not having our authority, respected. And in reality, people respect us more when they see that we're human and that we care deeply about them. There's nothing that can replace that.
Honestly, I feel like we could wrap up there because you just tied it in a bow so perfectly. But I did have one more question because
Yes.
you bring so much wisdom and clarity and experience to this conversation. And I suspect there's a journey there for you as well. And I'm curious, what does your story look like in regards to knowing when you need the mentorship? Like, what is it meant for you to be guided and coached and supported through your own personal development to enhance your ability to develop others? Because you started the conversation by saying, first we must develop ourselves, and then we must develop others. And so, in your journey, who's been in your corner, who's been helping you get through those sticky spots when you find yourself in fear and uncertainty?
Well, I have to say I'm really lucky because both of my business partners have become, close friends, and we have been that for each other. At different times, one of us is dealing with a challenge, or even with a business dealing with a challenge. We are there to support each other. There's this wonderful base of respect and love. And so that's just been a kind of a foundation and a rock. My husband is also my biggest fan and supporter. So after 43 years together, that's been another person I can rely on. But there are other people in the business world that if there's something specific business related that I'm finding I'm kind of getting spun up about this, then I'll reach out to whichever person I think might be most helpful for me in that situation. And I save myself so much time and energy by doing that. That's one of the things about getting older. You start realizing there's no time to waste, getting stuck in the mud about something. And it's my own creation. That's the other thing I've learned over time. I can work myself through some things just by recognizing what thought am I having that's producing this feeling
I
and
love that.
realizing that thought is not true. I don't have to believe it. I can let it kind of go by like a cloud.
So if folks want to find you, follow you, apart from listening to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast, which is a show that I love, how else can they get a hold of you, learn about your organization, follow you, the books, all the things?
My favorite platform is LinkedIn. So I would invite people to connect with me there. And our website is growstrongleaders.com, and you can learn about our books and our products and what we offer there. And like you said, my podcast. So I love connecting with people, having conversations, and being of service. So I'm happy to connect with any of your listeners that would like to have a conversation.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'm so grateful that you have been able to take the time out of your schedule to join us today. So many good insights. I have pages of notes here. So I love this show as well because it allows me to learn from my guests. And then the things I learn from you are probably going to show up in conversation with my students at some point in the future. So I love the time we get to spend together, Meredith. Thank you so much.
Erin, it's been fun and a pleasure. I've really enjoyed being with you.
And to all my friends out there listening, as always, if you're enjoying this content, please be sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you're consuming it because it helps us continue to attract the amazing guests that we have on the show, like Meredith, and helps this content get found. And if you have any feedback, any takeaways, or maybe a commitment that you're going to take in your own life or business, thanks to listening to Meredith, don't hesitate to DM her on LinkedIn or shoot me a message as well. I'm on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Official because we love hearing from you. We love knowing that maybe there was one little takeaway that you're going to apply in your life and business that's going to create some forward momentum for you towards the life that you've imagined, powered by the business that you've designed to fuel it. So, as always, I love you. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time.